What's up, everybody? This is FYGP, and for the first time we have actually my father joining me to do a joint video and to react to a CNN video. So welcome to the show, Dad. So glad to talk with these topics with you too as well.
Thank you, Milan. I'm also glad that you invited me.
Of course. So today's topic is, at the World Economic Forum, there were several elites that talked about the Ukraine war, and Fareed Zakaria, the CNN employee, asked them some questions about where this is going to end up. So without any further ado, let's take a look at the CNN video.
I moderated a panel this week packed with heavy hitters. Avril Haines, the U.S. Director of National Intelligence, the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, President Duda of Poland, and the Deputy Prime Ministers of Ukraine and Canada, Yulia Sviridenko and Krista Freeland. I started with a question to Ms. Haines. I wanted to know the U.S. intelligence community's perspective on where the war is now and where it's headed.
The way we would say it is not a stalemate, but really a grinding conflict at this stage, where quite literally we're talking about hundreds of meters being fought over in the context of the front lines. But I think from our perspective, both militaries obviously have challenges. It will be extremely important for Ukraine to receive essentially military assistance and economic assistance moving forward in order for them to be able to continue to manage what they have been heroically doing. And on the Russian side, we see also significant challenges: ammunition, supplies, morale, exhaustion, some dysfunction in the leadership, and so on. Things that are, I think, making it more difficult for the Russian military as well.
President Duda.
Okay, so let's just pause it right here. So you have the Director of U.S. National Intelligence, who has said that the Russians are the only ones facing logistics problems, and obviously she didn't mention Ukraine suffering the same logistics problems. What do you make of that?
Yeah, the problems are on both sides, I think. Russia certainly didn't want to be in this situation, in one mutual destruction between the two brotherly people, or Slavic people with the same religion, with the same values, and killing each other. That's why the beginning of the so-called special military operation in Ukraine has actually failed and brought this conflict to this stage.
No, I absolutely agree with that point. I think if Russia would have gone in harder and doctrinally from the beginning, I think we would have already had the negotiated settlement in Ukraine, where the puppet government would have caved, and of course on orders from NATO. Yes. So also what she said is that you need to continue sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine just for them to somehow make it through this, and she didn't talk about any Ukrainian victory, so the rhetoric has sort of dulled down, I would say, about that. So we continue?
Yeah, I think it's the cheapest war for the NATO and G7 and Western elite, because the most valuable in that are the lives of the people which are destroyed there, and this is the tragedy of this conflict.
No, I absolutely agree, and yes, my heart goes out to everybody who is suffering from this, and I hope that this gets ended quickly via negotiations. But as you can see, none of these people here are willing to even ponder about the idea of negotiating with Russia.
Yeah.
It is striking to me how strong the West has been, and other parts of the world as well, in supporting Ukraine. Do you think that the response is strong enough? And more importantly, what everybody worries about is will it stay strong?
This assistance we've just sent to Ukraine is still not enough. Ukraine needs more our efforts, needs more our aid, and we should mobilize ourselves to help them, because the situation is really difficult. And I'm afraid now it is, and it will be in a few, maybe months, maybe weeks, a crucial moment, next crucial moments of this war. And this moment will answer for the question, will Ukraine survive or not?
Okay, so here's Polish President Andrzej Duda, who says, I thought Ukraine was winning so heavily and that Russia was losing hundreds of thousands of troops and that Russia is going to fall apart soon. But Polish president is worried about whether Ukraine will survive. So how can you have it both ways? You cannot have it both ways. Either they're winning or they're losing. So I don't know.
You can't have both ways, but I mean, the Polish people have to be proud of their president. I mean, this is something incredible. He's talking like somebody is whispering in his ear what to say, and he's saying complete nonsense without knowing where he is and what is he talking about.
Exactly.
It's incredible. If this is the leader of the world, then where are we now?
And also he said we need to send more equipment and money, so 114 billion as of November 20th is not enough.
Yeah.
It's not enough. I mean, that's twice the annual military budget of Russia. Twice.
Yes, but the dollars don't count. I mean,
Yes.
that doesn't matter for Duda.
Yes, yes.
More dollars flow there, more dollars for him.
Exactly. And also there needs to be added that Poland pretty much could just wait for the chance to retake its old historic territories in Galicia. And probably that is what Poland is waiting for. And Ukraine and Poland don't have a very good historic relationship, since during World War II, the Banderites killed around 300,000 Poles in Western Ukraine. So this, I think, is an alliance of convenience.
Yes, it is just a historical goal of Poland to get their historical lands back.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you worry about the staying power of the West?
So the short answer is, of course, it would be stupid and naive not to, but I think we're going to do it. And I think, of course I worry. I am ultimately extremely confident. And I'm extremely confident, first and foremost, because of the magnificent job Ukraine is doing. And as President Zelensky very crucially pointed out, supplying Ukraine with the money it needs to win the war is ultimately in our own self-interest. So I'm a finance minister. And if you were to say to me, what is the one thing that G7 finance ministers, G7 governments this year could do that's actually in our power, right? We don't control COVID. We don't control global supply chains. We don't control whether there will be immaculate disinflation or not. One thing where we have some real practical levers is we can help Ukraine win clearly, definitively. And if we do that, if that happens this year, you know it as well as I do, Fareed, that would be a huge boost to the global economy.
So what do you make of this? What do you make
This
of...
is the stupidity that I have not heard in my life. I mean, the ultimate magnificent job that they're doing on killing their own sovereignty as a state and their own people. Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians will die in this war, and this is a really excellent job in our own interest. Now, who are we? And I think she's talking just about her own job, because she's completely miserable. She cannot influence world economy, she cannot do anything, but her job is to make this war as bloody as possible by pouring the oil into the fire until it kills even more people.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more with that. But then again, she says, we can't control COVID, we can't control this and that. I thought you run the world. I thought you can't control anything pretty much. And how is a victory of the West gonna help the economy revitalize? How is that? Is it gonna be from the cost of rebuilding Ukraine, that it's just gonna create new job opportunities and everything, or is it actually the goal of regime change in Russia that will help the Western economy? What do you see there?
I think, again, she doesn't know what she's speaking about. I don't know how this war helps the world economy, except perhaps the weapon industry in United States and Europe. These are the only industries that profit from this war. That's all.
Yeah.
So it is a destruction of humanity that they are risking with this war. They are staging the war against the nuclear power. How far this can go?
Yes. Yes.
How far are we from Armageddon with the people like this?
Yes.
I mean, her job is to pour the money there as much as possible as a finance minister, of Canadian money, of Canadian taxpayers, to pour this money into the corruption and war-torn country like Ukraine. I mean, we are not talking here about bringing values that we stand for. This is democracy. This is the civilization. We are talking here not about Europeization of Ukraine. We are talking here about, or she's talking about, Ukrainization of the rest of the Western world. And honestly, I'm against that.
No, I absolutely agree. And you saw it at the World Economic Forum in the Ukraine House. They had a big sign reading Project Ukraine is You. So what the World Economic Forum is telling you is actually we are going to make Ukraine out of every country.
Yes, let's hope this will not happen.
Yes, yes.
That's again. I mean, a Russian goal before the war started was geopolitical guarantees for Russia.
Yes.
They are well known what they asked. One, neutral Europe. They had nothing against Europe being in European Union, but Ukraine as a neutral country, military neutral country, which does not threatens Russia. Now, with this war developing and going out of control, we see how big a threat Ukraine could be for Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Armed with NATO weapons, Ukrainian military built by the NATO instructors and being de facto NATO.
Yes.
Even not in the official membership. That would be a real danger for Russia, and we should not forget that on Munich conference in February 2022, Zelensky asked for the revision of Budapest Memorandum from 1994, in which Ukraine renounced to nuclear weapons in exchange for the guaranteeing of Ukrainian borders. The revision consisted in rearmament of Ukraine with nuclear weapons. So let's imagine nuclear Ukraine on the borders of Russia, outside NATO, and starting the nuclear war.
Yes, yes.
And we are serious about that. It's not something out of mind.
And Ukraine has the uranium, it has the scientists able to create nuclear weapons. So
Yes.
that was not out of the realm of possibility. So, yeah, shall we continue with the video?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Secretary General, you heard the President of Ukraine say he would like to be a member of NATO. Will you let him in?
NATO's position remains unchanged, and that is that Ukraine will become a member of NATO.
I just want to pause it here. That is the entire reason why we have the war, because NATO kept on saying all the time Ukraine might join NATO one day. And right now you have Stoltenberg, who is the bureaucrat in charge of NATO, again saying Ukraine will one day become part of NATO. What do you make of that?
Never. It will never happen. NATO doesn't want Ukraine as a member of NATO. Ukraine is only useful as non-NATO member, which will be hostile to Russia. That's the only use of Ukraine.
Yes, I agree, because if you would have had Ukraine in NATO, then that would mean that we would have World War III. So I don't
Yes.
think that they would want that either. It's much more useful for them to just use Ukraine as a NATO proxy and to weaken Russia for Ukraine. That is obviously the goal of this entire operation.
Yes, weakening Russia is one point. The another point is a regime change in Russia that is perhaps the ultimate goal of NATO.
Yes, yes. I mean, you saw it in the beginning of the war when Joe Biden said Putin cannot remain in power. That was his exact words.
Yes.
And then he was actually forced to backtrack
Yes.
this statement, and a bunch of aides came out, no, that's not actually what he meant. But when you listen to someone who is more of a hawk, like John Bolton, for example, John Bolton, the former national security advisor to Trump, who is a complete neocon, he said that he wants regime change in Russia.
Yes.
So you've got to at least give credit to John Bolton for being honest.
Yes. I don't know if you heard that Stoltenberg is one of the candidates for IMF president.
Really? For IMF president? No, I
Yes.
did not hear that. I heard that somebody nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize.
I think
Yeah,
it's possible
it's possible, yeah.
to have Stoltenberg.
I mean, why doesn't Zelensky get the Nobel Peace Prize? I mean, you might as well give it to Zelensky.
Yeah, they have to share. One is the man of the world, and the
Yeah.
other one is...
Is the World Nobel Peace Prize. Exactly. Let's continue.
Then, of course, the main focus now is to support Ukraine, to ensure that Ukraine wins the war and prevails as a sovereign, independent, democratic nation in Europe. It is extremely important that President Putin doesn't win this war, partly because it will be a tragedy for the Ukrainians, but it will be very dangerous for all of us. Because then the message to authoritarian leaders, not only to Putin, but also other authoritarian leaders, is that when they use brutal force, when they violate international law, they achieve what they want. And that will be a very bad and dangerous lesson. It will make the world more dangerous and us more vulnerable. And that's the reason why, if we want a negotiated peaceful solution to the war in Ukraine, we need to provide military support to Ukraine. That's the only way. weapons, they are the way to peace. And that may sound like a paradox, but the only way to have a negotiated agreement is to convince President Putin that he will not win on the battlefield. He has to sit down and negotiate. Nobody knows how this war will end. Most likely it will end around the negotiating table. What we do know is that what happens around that negotiating table is totally dependent on the strength of the battlefield. And if we want Ukraine to prevail, then they need the military strength.
So that is the video from CNN. We can react to Stoltenberg here at the end. He said that Ukraine needs to prevail as a sovereign and democratic nation, but Ukraine is neither one of those things. Actually, it's not sovereign because it's in control, complete puppet of NATO, basically, so you have no sovereignty. And it's not democratic because Zelensky banned all of the opposition parties except the right-wing and neo-Nazi ones. So you don't have that. And then what really was the most shocking part of the video is that Stoltenberg actually said, weapons are the way to peace. That's what he said. I mean, we can play it again maybe. And that is straight out of 1984, pretty much. You remember the book 1984 where they said war is peace?
Yes. Yes, I have nothing to add to this. Just read Orwell 1984 and everything will be clear.
And then he says it's also important for us to stop Russia in Ukraine because I assume what the implication is here that Russia would move on to invade other European countries or something like that.
Yes.
I don't understand exactly what he is trying to say there. I think that's what he.
It's silly. Just he wants to spread fear among the people and demonize Russia, which is going to occupy the whole Europe and the whole world, and encourage other non-democratic regimes
yes.
to do the same. So, I mean, we have seen this through the history, this demonization and all these things. It's always the same. And I mean, the new thing is that he's talking here about negotiations table, but what NATO is doing to come to the negotiation table.
So, and also, I would just want to point out the complete hypocrisy of him saying that Russia needs to be punished for invading a sovereign democratic nation, or whatever he calls Ukraine, but the United States has invaded maybe a dozen nations since 1990, and nobody has said anything. When has anybody imposed sanctions on the United States for doing this? Never, right? Yes, also he talked about that the war will be ended at the negotiations table anyway. So what was the point of having the war in the first place? I mean, especially if your position might be worse off at the negotiations table than it was before the war.
Yes. I mean, NATO gave only one principle for not accepting a negotiated settlement before the war, and this is that any country can choose to join NATO, which is questionable.
It's not like that.
It's really questionable. It's a principle which cannot be justified at all. Finally, each NATO country can block any other country wishing to be a member, so it's not a principle of choice. The other thing is what NATO would lose with neutral Ukraine. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, we would
Absolutely
lose
nothing. What the United States would lose with the neutral Ukraine? Absolutely nothing. They could do still their business in Ukraine as they did before, with the Biden family and with corruption and with all these things going on. So,
I mean, the weapons manufacturers wouldn't make all of that money, and BlackRock wouldn't get the contracts for rebuilding.
yes.
So that is, I think, a big thing as well.
and all this on hundreds of thousands of people which suffer suffer from this war.
Yeah, it's just horrific, and I think we can end this video here. I just want to say we all hope that this ends quickly and that this ends at the negotiations table, and that somebody cooler heads prevail than these people right here, and that somebody phones Putin and initiates a peace process. But do you think it's too late for that? That's my final question to you.
I think it's too early for that.
For them.
Too early for them, yeah. It's too early. They don't want to stop this war at this moment.
Yes, yes.
I mean, one phone call could stop this war and killing.
I agree. Thank you for being on the podcast with me. And
Thank you, Milan.
And see you guys next time. This is Free Yourselves Globally Project. Tuning out.